Hello everyone and welcome back to Monsters of the Mind. So, eagles. You know, those birds that like to swoop down, grab things. Yeah, those guys. Well, mythology has also had its fair share of eagles. There's one we'll be talking about in a later video, but the Middle East also has its own giant eagle. Ladies and gentlemen, the Rock. I, for the life of me, could not find out what the word rock means. Everything I see just says it's Persian in origin, without saying what on earth it's supposed to mean. It was, I think it's a species, but every story I've ever heard about it always describes it only as being one individual, but yet nearly every story also attributes an egg to it. So I guess either the rock is a single individual capable of asexual reproduction, or rocks are a species, and for whatever reason they only ever describe one rock in these stories. Anyway, it was pretty morally neutral, since it has never been described as being anything more than an eagle that likes to eat things. It lives somewhere in the Indian Ocean. It's mostly described as being on the island of Madagascar, which we'll talk about later, and it comes from Middle Eastern folklore. Appearance-wise, the rock is always portrayed as being a huge eagle, being at least big enough to carry away an elephant with ease. The most famous story involving the rock is when it appeared in the story of Sinbad the Sailor, from the story collection 1001 Arabian Nights, where in the story the titular Sinbad is unknowingly kidnapped by the bird, and ends up in its nest, where an egg described as being the size of 128 chicken eggs, which, by the way, I tried to estimate, but there were so many variables that I couldn't figure out how big that would be. Anyway, Sinbad later escapes by unwinding his turban and lassoing it around the rock's foot, at which point he rides it to another island where his story continues. There was also a real-life incident where famous explorer Marco Polo claimed to have encountered the rock when he visited Madagascar, and allegedly when he was asked for proof, he brought what he claimed to have been one of its feathers. Which, if this story is true, most people think that what he actually brought back was the frond of one of these palm trees, since they do look like giant feathers, in a way. As for what Marco saw if he wasn't lying, most people think what he saw was the Madagascarian elephant bird, which most people actually use as an explanation for the rock in general, since it would explain the size and large eggs, since elephant birds are famous for their huge eggs, being the biggest of any bird. It adds up timeline-wise, too, since the elephant bird didn't go extinct until the 17th century, which was after most of the stories of the rock were written. Everything else, like it eating elephants and flying, is most likely a case of explorer exaggeration. Now let's pass the mic over to Vincent to see what he has to say about this thing. To be honest, the rock kind of freaks me out. He killed one of my uncles. He just swooped down, picked him up, never to be seen again. Although, weirdly enough, despite being freaked out by them, I'm also kind of fascinated by it. It's so big, and I just like seeing it fly through the sky. Although, like I just said, they're terrifying. I once saw the rock eat an entire herd of unicorns like it was a pack of chicken nuggets. That should just give you an estimate about how ravenous it is. Now that we got that out of the way, let's look at the card. You know, in every story I've ever read about the rock, it's always basically just portrayed as a giant eagle. But I guess that wasn't good enough for this card, so they gave it teeth and a snake tongue for some reason. Neither of these things have any mythological basis. Although something I do take solace with is that even this card doesn't know what rock means, since it just says that the word rock is Persian in origin. So I am thankful that I'm not the only one who's struggling to figure out what its name means. Also on the back of the card, it claims that it protected treasure. Now, this is an interesting claim because I looked through 8 different sources and only one of them ever mentioned anything about treasure, and even then it was in such a passerby way and didn't draw any attention to it. So, maybe the rock is supposed to guard treasure, maybe it's not. I genuinely don't know. I give this card a 9 out of 10 for the teeth and tongue. I'm not deducting any points for the treasure thing because I'm not sure about that being inaccurate myself. Now, since The Rock is famous for its appearance in the Sinbad story, it's obvious that a lot of its appearances have to do with that, although it has appeared in plenty of media without Sinbad. So let's look at some of its appearances. The Rock shows up in Dungeons and Dragons. Get used to me saying that a lot, because I'll be saying that for about 95% of the creatures in this series. In DreamWorks' Sinbad movie, The Rock is given ice powers. In Ray Harryhausen's Sinbad movie, The Rock has 2 heads. They probably confused it for the Thunderbird. There was a Popeye cartoon where Popeye met Sinbad, and here The Rock is portrayed as having a blue body with a red head. The Rock appeared in an episode of My Little Pony, and it appeared in an episode of the Aladdin TV show. The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker features an enemy known as Helma Rock, which is clearly inspired by The Rock. Although I've heard some people claim it's based off the Thunderbird, but considering that it's a giant eagle in a game about sailing, and the fact that it has the word rock in its name, I'm like 95% sure it's based on The Rock. That's all for this episode of Monsters of the Mind. Join us next time when we do our first double feature. Yeah, those are coming back. Bye!